Hey, it's LaShanda Henry here, creator of the Unblock Your Blessings 90-Day Challenge, created to help you build your best business, life, and self. Now, before we get started with the first step in our 12-step 90 days, I want to first remind you to send me a video or a photo of your Be Blessed vision board. Hopefully you had a chance to watch that video on unblockyourblessings.com on how to create what I like to call my Be Blessed vision board. So you can think about those things that you want to accomplish now within the next 90 days and also after the 90 days, what you want to happen. So definitely create that Be Blessed vision board. You can take a picture of it. You can send me the picture or even do a video and upload that to YouTube. My email is lhenry@sistersense.com, and I would absolutely love to see what you guys have done thus far to start the challenge with me and make sure that we're making things happen over the course of the next 90 days. So the first step, well, let me backtrack and say this. Every step of this challenge is divided into 3 essential parts, okay? First, I'm going to share a choice with you that I believe you ultimately have to make. Then I want to chat with you and give you some scenarios and really share some stories with respect to what that choice is and how important it is as far as the process of unblocking your blessings. And then last but not least is the challenge, something that I want you to really think about and challenge yourself to do within each step of the way of us working through this 90-day process together. Okay? So today's challenge, or rather I should say the choice for today's challenge is this. You have to choose to control or be controlled. I feel like this is a really important step because a lot of times people feel like their life is out of their control. People will often say, and I hear clients or even family members and friends, my life sucks, my luck sucks, things are just not happening for me, and it's because of the situation that I am in. It's the circumstances, it's the people, it's the finances, it's all of these things that make my life suck, right? Now, when I think about it, I've had my own obstacles in life, and when we get to the point where I talk about chat, I will share some stories, really intimate stories with you about things that have happened to me. But the idea that I want to impart with this first step is this. You have to choose to be in control versus be controlled by people, circumstances, and everything that you feel is holding you back in life. I want you to remember this quote that I feel just kind of resonates with me oftentimes when I go through obstacles. There is no testimony without a test. You can't get to that point where you say, girl, this is my blessing, without going, girl, this is the test that I'm going through right now. It's killing me. And I feel like sometimes I'm about to fail, but it's a test. And in order for me to call it a testimony, I've got to go through it. I've got to power through it so I can get to the blessing at the end of the other side. Life is, to me, it's hard. It's a beautifully complex journey. And on that path that we're going through, there's a divine purpose for, I believe, everything that happens, good or bad. There's a divine purpose for everything that happens. Now, I also believe that God has given us free will for a reason, and with that, we have the power to choose whether or not you want to fulfill your purpose, whether or not I want to fulfill my purpose, or whether you want to feel like, well, you know what, this is not within my power or control to do anything. I'm just going to have to sit back and let life take its course because I really don't control what happens, okay? So again, the choice for today, the first step, is to choose to be in control versus choose to be controlled. Now, let's chat. In my life, I've had to learn this the hard way lots and lots and lots of times. And I think about a couple of instances that I particularly want to share with you. I remember when I came up with the idea to create my first website, Multiple Shades of You Online. I was interning at IBM at the time, and I had met several wonderful IBM employees that were, minority, specifically women in power, and of other women who were my age that were also interning, and I kind of wanted to say, you know, I've got this great idea for a website and e-zine for young girls. What do you think? Would you like to come on board? You know, whether they were a young 20-something person like myself or an older, established, experienced worker at IBM. I just had this like little portfolio, and I kept going around and talking to people. I finally got one other peer of mine who said, you know what, I'm really on board with what you got, LaShanda. And I guess the idea was wonderful. And like I said, you know, ideas are exciting until they're not. But when it came times to work on the project, again, it really was my baby and not hers. So she definitely dropped the ball on me, and it didn't go anywhere with me working with her. And then I think about when I was in college, and I said, okay, well, it's my senior year and I'm graduating, and I definitely don't want to go and move back home with mom. I want to be on my own, but I cannot get an apartment by myself. I just can't. I just told myself I could not get an apartment by myself. So I was looking for friends, and I ended up moving in with my one of our close friends and my sister. That if you ever had a horror story with respect to roommates, that definitely was one. I won't tell you about the time when one of my one of my roommates had a random man jump into my bed in the middle of the night, among other things. But that was a complete horror story. But I did not believe, like the website, I didn't believe I could start that on my own. I didn't believe I could rent an apartment on my own. So I ended up in the situation that I was in. Now, my website was kind of like a hobby. It wasn't necessarily a business. But when I was ready to create my first business, same thing, same fears, same things holding me back. I was like, okay, well, let me go to a couple of my close friends who are also very entrepreneurial. They had that entrepreneur spirit like myself. And I said, okay, well, I want to do this business and I think you'd be great. One of the things that I love doing is finding the strengths in the people around me and seeing how we can partner together to become kind of like a superpower strength, right? And of course, those people, they had their own things. They had their own issues blocking their blessings. So while we were good in one respect, the business, it just wasn't going to move forward because a lot of people love to create ideas. They never go anywhere because after the idea is not exciting anymore, the business is not real. So whether it be my first business or my first website or my first apartment, I realized at some point, not by my own testament, I will say, actually by someone very close to me who said, why do you always do that? Why are you always asking other people to help you to get things done when in the end you end up having to do it on your own anyway? And I was like, I don't know. I need help. I realized that it was a belief that was controlling me, not so much the people around me, but this belief that I could not do anything on my own. I couldn't do it the right way, or I couldn't do it successfully without at least one or two people there to support me to make it happen. Now, as this wonderful, very close friend to me, just happens to be the father of my child, informed me, I have a lot of gifts and I have a lot of talents, and ultimately you cannot wait or give people the responsibility of actualizing your dream for you. They cannot actualize your dream for you. They can't be on board to push it to make it happen. It's your baby, so make it happen. So my first apartment, my first real apartment, whether it be that situation or the website or a business, I got to a point where I realized I have to stop asking other people to get on board. I have to just make things happen for myself and be in control versus be controlled by this idea that I need other people before I can get these things off the ground. So that was something that I personally had to deal with as far as being controlled. Again, maybe it's a person that's controlling you right now, but in my particular circumstance, those examples that I was giving, it wasn't necessarily the people, but my belief that those people, their support or even their validation was the thing that was required in order for me to get the job done. And it really wasn't. All I needed to do was have enough courage and enough passion within myself to move forward on any of or all of those ideas. Now, another example, you know, because we're chatting here, and I'm going to talk about things that have happened to me, and hopefully, whether you come out to one of my events or we sit down on a call, you can say, well, LaShanda, let me tell you my story, okay? When I was in New York, I want to say my son was somewhere between 3 to 6 months in age. We were going through some very interesting things at the time in New York, living in our apartment that was originally owned by my mother. I should say not owned, but rented out by my mother. I believe we were at the beginning stages of gentrification in a lot of Brooklyn areas, and for that reason, I was getting a lot of resistance from my landlord, the building owners at the time, for me staying in that apartment for one reason or another. They wanted as many of us out as possible, so obviously it's a rent stabilized apartment. They can double if not triple the rent. If you don't know, you know, rent in New York is somewhere between $1,200 to $1,500 just for maybe a hole in the wall. But that was several years ago, so I was going through the stress of that. And at some point, my hubby and, you know, my small son, we said, you know, we're going to save up. We're going to save up. We're going to move out of this apartment, and we're going to get our own place. We're going to get something better. The day we decided to do that, he went out and he was going to visit one of his friends. One of his, I think one of his enduring lovely habits is that he's so loving as with respect to his friends, and always wanting to go out and every couple of months, even when he's busy and working, just kind of check in with everybody and make sure everybody's okay. And I remember saying to him, well, when you come back, get me a hamburger. I want a hamburger from Wendy's. And I was sitting in my little mini office, and I got the baby in the bassinet, and he took one of the pictures of my son, one of my favorite pictures of him and my son with him, and he was like, yeah, I'm going to show him the picture. As it turns out, I want to say fairly late that night, one of his friends calls me and he says, are you sitting down? And I said, why? He's like, Jay's been arrested, and I'm freaking out. I'm absolutely in a panic. As I have never experienced anything like this before, I come to find out over the course of several hours and conversations with the precinct and not getting the right answers that he was assaulted by several police officers. He was beaten up, and they were charging him with things that were so far from the truth. But unfortunately, one of the challenges of living in New York City, especially as an African American male, is being accosted by police officers on the street, racial profiling, being unlawfully searched and seized, and in many cases assaulted. And then, of course, they justify their assault for one way, shape, or form. It was definitely one of the hardest things that I've ever had to go through. And over the course of several days, with the help of family members and friends, we were able to figure out how to get him out. And then, you know, seeing him all bruised and swollen, and taking him to the hospital and being in the emergency room, it was just a compounding situation that just kept getting worse and worse and worse. And then being in the courthouse, that was the first time I've ever been, you know, in the downtown Brooklyn in the courthouse, and seeing all of these people being charged for one thing or another. And then when we get up to the judge to hear all of these ridiculous charges that they were charging him for, and it was disheartening. So now we have this court case that was supposed to be in a couple of weeks, and we had to get a lawyer. And, you know, of course, I'm like, what's going on? I mean, police officers are supposed to protect us. I don't know what's happening. It was just words cannot express. We went through that court case for quite some time, and he actually won his court case. And of course, officers got a slap on the wrist, but it was definitely one of those situations where, I will say this to say, I won't go into all the details of the case, but I do remember him saying when he was in there, they were like looking up his name in the system, and they were like You have no records, you have no priors, because obviously when you have a prior, they can use that to trump up their charge. This is a person who's never been arrested, who's never hurt a fly. He actually literally would like take little insects in the house and put them out the window. That's just how he is. And so to see the lengths that they would go to, the corruption that is in the police system, and the, you know, just compounding in New York, it was definitely something that was disheartening and frustrating to me. Now, this situation just got amplified because every time we went to the court to deal with his situation and fix it and rectify and prove that he was innocent and he didn't do all the things that they said he did, they would tell us to come back. We would wait hours, and I'm sitting in a courtroom with an infant, and it's cold, and going to Manhattan and talking to the lawyer and not having the money to go and pay off these people to help us with the case. It was just constantly frustrating, and the situation just continued to compound. At some point, I decided that between that situation and the gentrification and dealing with the landlord and just not having my mother, because my mother had already moved to Florida, and feeling just confused and torn, and a new mother at that, I decided that, you know what, there needs to be a different way. I know we said we were going to move out and get our own place in a year, but we need to go now. We need to move, and we need to make things happen for ourselves now. And we made the decision in the heart of going back and forth with his case that actually took, I want to say, about 4 or 5 years to move to North Carolina. And I share this story because to me, it was one of the pivotal moments in my life where I was like, I'm not going to be controlled. I am going to take control of this situation. No, I can't control when the judge says come back tomorrow. No, I can't control all the things that they're saying about this person who I absolutely love and all these lies that are absolutely false. I can't control when they say, if you don't come in tomorrow, we're going to put out a warrant for his arrest. I can't control the anxiety that I feel. I cannot control when the landlord is banging on my door. And even when I'm saying, please take the rent money, they're not taking it. And they're literally tearing it up in my face and saying, we want you out because we want other people in. I cannot control any of those circumstances, but I can choose to not let those circumstances control me. I can choose to change my environment. I can choose to release myself from the anxiety I feel when I'm walking down the street and I hear a police siren. I start to become anxious. When I hear the phone ring, I'm like, where is he? Why isn't he home yet? I can release that anxiety by choosing something else. So I didn't wait for other people to tell me what the decision was. I said, you know what we're going to do? We're going to leave. And we moved to North Carolina. We made the decision to move, and it was a joint decision. I actually wanted to move to Florida where my mom was. And he said, you know what? Florida's too hot. I want to go to North Carolina. Plus my mother is there. So family is family to me. We moved to North Carolina. And what's interesting about that is, in hindsight, back in, I want to say 2011, I believe it was, we were featured in Ebony magazine about African Americans moving back to the South in the gentrification process. And I talked about a lot of the frustrations that led me to move. But back in then, and I believe that was 06, 07, back then, did I know that I was going to be inside of Ebony magazine sharing my testimony and my test? Absolutely not. Did I know that was going to be my first photo shoot and here I'm talking to people and letting them know what I went through? Absolutely not. I didn't know that at the time. I was cold. I was on a train. I was with a 3-month-old sitting hours and hours in a courthouse crying my eyes out because I'm like, this cannot be my life. But then I stopped. And I took control of the situation by not letting it control me. I didn't wait for other people to help me. I didn't wait for the circumstance to change. And so that is what I want you to think about today. I want you to take control versus be controlled. There was a particular moment in the case that kind of really hit home for me when I realized I couldn't wait. I kept saying to myself, well, you know what? This is all a mistake. He's going to get off and it's going to be fine because the lawyer says that, you know, we're going to go, we're going to show. Obviously, he didn't do all these crazy things that they said. They beat him up. Clearly, we've got pictures. We've got proof. We've got witnesses. It's going to be done. And the lawyer's like, yeah, just a couple of times we go to the court office and we'll be done. Then a month goes by and 2 months go by. And 3 months go by. And every time we go in that court office and I'm excited, like this is the end. And then they tell us, come back again. And my heart sinks. My heart literally sinks. I say to myself, this is the last time. This is the last time I'm going to make my life and my happiness be controlled by this case and this situation. You know what? It sucks. It's something that we have to deal with, but this is the last time my heart is going to drop and I'm going to come in here anxious or overly excited that this is going to be over. It's going to be a part of our life for however long it's going to be a part of our life. But you know what? I'm going to compartmentalize it and do all the other amazing things that I have to continue to do for myself, for my son, for his father, for a future. So we moved and we made changes. And around that time, when my son was born, I tell you all that was the time I decided that I was going to work for myself full time at home. I wasn't going to do the side hustle anymore. It was going to be a full-time thing. I took control of my situation, and I want you to do that for yourself. Okay? So we talked about the choice that you have to make. Choose to be in control versus be controlled. We talked about a little bit of chat, sharing whether or not I feel like I was being controlled by the belief that I couldn't do things without other people, or being controlled by this circumstance that I felt like it was such a horrible thing that I had to go through for not years, months or weeks, but years. But I realized at some point I couldn't let those people or circumstances control me. I had to make changes and control the situation for myself, which is essentially what I did. Now, there are 3 divine truths that I hold to. I consider myself to be a very spiritual person. I will be honest with you. I will say this. I'm not a church goer. I'm not a Sunday get up in the morning, go to church girl, but I consider myself to be a very spiritual person. And everything that I've learned, as far as what I learned when I went to my Christian elementary school, to what I've learned from my mother, those things are kind of like deeply embedded into me, and I keep them with me forever and ever. Now, there are 3 divine truths that I always kind of call on when I am in situations where I need to decide whether or not this is a control or be controlled instance. God helps those who help themselves. I never, ever, ever put myself in a situation where, again, I say my life sucks or my luck sucks or I can't do anything about anything, because I believe that God helps those who help themselves, which means if I'm not helping myself, God is not going to help me get through the situation. So I always choose to be in control and do all that I can potentially do to help myself, because God helps those who help themselves. God gives us no more than we can bear. There was a situation where during my hubby's court case, it got to the point where we were even at opposition with his lawyer. And I said, if the people who are supposed to help us are at opposition with us, God, what are we going to do? I remember that one instance where we had gone back to New York, because every time we had to go back for a court case, I had to take pretty much everything I had and give it to the lawyer or give it to, witnesses. I had to pay a lot of money for this case, money that I didn't have. We got there for the lawyer to say, one, I'm sorry, but this is not happening. And just noting that he could have just said that before we bought the tickets, that would have been helpful. But it was a very challenging trip. And I remember being in the bathroom floor of my friend's home at the time, because we stayed with her during that instance of the trial anyway. And I was just crying and crying and crying. And I called my mother and I said, I can't take this. I can't take this anymore. And she said to me, God gives us no more than we can bear, which she always says to me when I have one of those moments, because it reminds me that it may seem like there's a ton on my back, but he knows that I can handle this. He knows that I'm in control of this. And yeah, I have to cry. There's nothing wrong with crying. You've got to release that. But once you release it, that's it. It's not about sitting on the phone and talking to people about it for hours and hours, or repeating it and being angry about it. It's about releasing it, letting it go, and then being in control of the next thing. So God gives us no more than we can bear. And of course, this is one of my favorites. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. This is one of my personal favorites because, when it comes to Sister Sense, my mantra is always the Nike commercial, just do it. I can do all things through Christ. He strengthens me. He makes me stronger. Even when I feel that I'm so tired and fatigued and frustrated, you just have to tap into something inside of you. And so Those are my 3 divine truths. My challenge for you is to number one, think about something that's happening in your life right now. It could be a circumstance. It could be a belief. It could be a person or group of people. I want you to think about that, and I want you to write down what your choice is with respect to being in control versus being controlled. For me, like I said, my decision was clear. I needed to not ask, and there were quite a few people who were confrontational about me as far as leaving New York and why it was a bad decision and how I had such a great apartment and I needed to fight for it and all this wonderful stuff. And I said, you know what? I don't need anyone's validation. I don't need anyone to help me get out here. I don't need any of you to get an apartment with me, because the first time that was horrible. I'm in control of this. I'm going to leave. I'm going to relocate, and I'm going to start fresh. That was my choice. What's yours? Your challenge today is to choose to be in control. Find something that you are going to choose to be in control of versus be controlled by. And I want you, while you're thinking about this challenge, to also think about your own personal divine truths. If you are a spiritual person like myself, what are some truths that you hold near and dear to your heart? Because these are the things that you're going to need to help you through this test that eventually, I trust and believe, please believe me, eventually will be your testimony. Okay? So that's it. You've got the choice. You've got some chat. And now you have your challenge. This is step 1 in the Unblock Your Blessings 90-day challenge. Talk to you soon. Take care. Bye.